Nobody will buy you because you're credible, but you can't solve their challenge. They're going to buy you first because you can solve their challenge, and then they're going to verify your credibility. You've got to reverse it. Otherwise, you're going to put them to sleep and you're going to lose the deal.
Hello, and welcome to the Startup Field Guide, where we explore how early stage founders and startup leaders find product market fit and scale their companies from 0 to 1. Today, I'm your host, Hannah Steinhardt, and I'm joined by my colleague, Doug Regner, who will co-host this episode. Hi, Doug.
Hello, everyone.
We are excited to chat with the one and only Samantha Mckenna, founder of SamSales and a leader in building go-to-market strategies today. Welcome to the Field Guide, Sam, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, guys. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. So we'd love to get started just by hearing a little bit about your background, how you got started in sales. What was that like early part of your story?
I think probably like a lot of people listening, one, I was reticent to think about the word sales or to get into the profession. And then two, I fell into sales. So I think when I moved to Washington, D.C. a couple of years after college, I was looking for a job. Finally got one. I got laid off in the great layoffs of 2008, if anybody remembers that lovely fiscal crisis. And then was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? And somebody had recruited me and said, you'd be great in sales. And I definitely got a little nauseous at the idea. I turned down the idea and they were like, don't worry, just come over. You don't have to make cold calls. You don't have to do any of that. You can just be an account manager. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I even changed my title to business development because I was so afraid of the word sales, if that tells you how fearful I was of that. But got in, and I think the thing that kind of just changed my lens out of the get-go and then made this my beloved career was really thinking about sales in a different way. That you're not here to pitch and to sell, you're here to solve. And if you really show up to talk to clients, network that way, open conversations that way, open discovery calls, and just thinking about they probably have some challenges. There's a reason why they gave me time. Now let me figure out how to solve them. You'll end up selling anyway, but doing it in a way that lets you sleep at night, maintain your dignity and integrity at the same time. And 16, 17 years later, I couldn't love this profession anymore.
I love that framing of you're not here to sell, you're here to solve. I feel like that's already such a great takeaway. I'm curious and that sounds like maybe this is one of them, but what do you think are some of the most common mistakes or misconceptions that a startup founder might have about walking into an enterprise sales process?
Oh my gosh. On the enterprise side specifically, so I think one is they just even laying a foundation for what different size organizations look like, right? So some people will think about SMB, commercial, enterprise, all being the same sales process, and it is so not and so complicated on the enterprise side. The rewards are enormous, right? You can sell multi-million-dollar deals, tens of millions of dollars, and multi-year deals on top of that. But you also have to think about before you go into that enterprise sales motion, are you ready for it? Do you have the right security guidelines? Do you have the right processes? Do you have the right insurance? Do you have the right integrations? If you're going to sell to a DuPont or a GE or a Salesforce, right, you have to think about what are the things they're going to require. And we probably don't match those things, especially if you're early stage. I think misconception, though, on the sales front specifically, it's probably not a misconception, unfortunately, because our profession still has that air of, hustle culture, here to be self-serving, those kinds of things. And it's part of what our company is really working hard to pull apart and say, it doesn't have to be that. You don't have to be all of those. The reputation that sales has, you don't have to be that in order to be successful here. But I also think that founders struggle to get into sales because one, they think about the reputation it has, and then two, they think, do I have to make 100 cold calls to be successful? Do I have to bully people into buying my stuff? And gosh, you so don't. It can be so much better and more glorious than that.
Sam, I love your story about your background. I don't think any of us grew up wishing to be in sales. Like once it's something in our elementary
my
school
dream.
said, yes, this is what I want to be. I think I was a fireman, which my brother is, but I'm not. So a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast are technical founders. They're engineers by trade, or maybe they're not a founder, but they're thinking about starting their company. So I know you touched on this a second ago, but how would you encourage them to think about getting started?
Yeah. I think one, you have to think about why it is that you would exist. So if you create a product, why? What is the product? What is the differentiator? What is your so what about your value proposition that will help you compete, stand out, and close business? I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go and create this product. We're going to go and, disrupt Uber and Lyft. There's, I don't know, 50 of you guys already out there. What's going to be different about you that's going to help you compete and gain market share? So I think that's the first thing to think about is why did you start? What was missing in the market or in capabilities of a product that you have now that makes you think this is going to work? The other thing I would think about as you think about getting started and think of your value proposition is then say, so what, right? So if we look at SamSales, we're a sales training company that can help your sellers, I don't know, set their sales on fire. So what? So what about us and our value proposition? What is it that was really going to make impact about what we do? Get to the heart of that. The other thing that I would think about is you're maybe towing the line on thinking of getting started is the economics of it. And I think that can be really scary. So if you are working in corporate America right now, you have benefits and a salary. And my husband said this the other day. I get to show up to work, do my job, and I get a paycheck when I leave. You show up and you have to figure out how to get that paycheck while you're doing the work. And I'm like, yes, it's so fun. It's not for the faint of heart. I'll just say that. But I would say be really conservative in terms of the runway that you give yourself. You may want to raise capital. You may not want to. You may want to bootstrap like we have. But give yourself 12 to 18 months of that salary that's been built up so that you can give yourself some breathing room. It takes time. And even if you have people who are already lining up, great relationships, all of that stuff that are saying they're willing to buy from you, sometimes the tune changes when you're like, I have the product now. Give me your money. Hopefully a little bit more tactfully than that. And if that's your sales pitch, then talk to me because I can definitely help you. But consider that it's going to take time to get that going. And then the real work starts when you have to create an outbound motion and you can't just rely on people to inbound to you or your friends and family.
So I want to talk about outbound, but before we move on to that, so if I'm a default builder, I'm an engineer, and I want to do some of the things that you just mentioned, like how would you recommend developing that skill of thinking about why you're there and articulating what your product does, the so what?
I think vet it out to your potential buyers. So start there. If I started a company and I could solve this challenge, would you buy it? Just ask, right? It's not you're not asking for money. You're not selling anything. You're just saying, in theory, if I created this, is there enough of a pain point that you would pay money for it? And what kind of money would you pay for it? Would it be an annual license? Would you pay per person that has access to it? What would you do? Start to ask those questions because I think before you have a product, before you have a baby that somebody can call ugly, right? They're going to call your theoretical baby ugly, which is great. Hopefully that's a sound clip we pull from this podcast. But they're going to say that. They're going to say, here are my concerns. Here's why I wouldn't do this. It's harder when you've built something and you're like, look at this. And then like, and they're going to give you some niceties and whatever. Ask before. Go to your target buyers. Ask your scary target buyers that you've had exposure to, either in your company, outside your company, previous clients, etc. And say, what would you do? What's the challenge? How am I going to have issues selling this? And start to get that feedback early. I think just the other thing I would think about, depending on if you have a tangible product, if it's software, if it takes a long time to build, etc., I'd start to build pieces of that to sell. The product does not need to be enterprise grade ready before you launch. Start to build the pieces of it and see, is there a market for this? Can you even get people to pay you to further develop the product? That's something that really tends to surprise founders is you don't need to have it all figured out. People are going to come to you and say, we love A and B of your product. If you could get it to D, that would kill it for us. We're willing to be a guinea pig client. We'll give you $100,000 to develop it and then give us a guarantee of XYZ price forever. But don't think it needs to be built out because I see people do that. They perfect the product or they create a learning academy of sorts over 24 months and then nobody buys it. You're like opening the shop before you figure out if people will actually even want it.
Right. Yeah, the risk of that is you get too far and you don't have actually time to redevelop your product before it's...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned these feedback calls, which is, we would agree, is very important. In order to get those, you have to reach out to people. And outbound prospecting right now, I would argue, is maybe the hardest it's ever been. You've got AI tools, automated tools that are really flooding the market with, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but there's just a lot of volume, right? So how would you advise a founder right now if they're in the early stages of their product formation or they're actually starting to sell their product to do outbound effectively?
Yeah. So a couple of things on the feedback loop, I would definitely go to the people you have relationships with first. We get a lot of notes over email, DM on LinkedIn that say, I launched a product and I love your feedback. People that I don't know. And I want to respond and say, I'm sure you would. But I'm a little bit more polite than that. So one, go to the people that you've already done tons of favors for. You have that investment. Get the feedback there. On the outbound perspective, a couple of things. So one, I would tell you, start doing your outbound before you need it, right? So this is like you saving your money before you ever need it. Save and save work before you get to that pivotal point of crap, we need to save money. Outbound takes time, it takes work. And the thing is, too, it's not just that it takes time to get somebody to respond and take a meeting with you, but you're usually catching them. 97% of the market isn't in the market for what you have. They might be in 3 months and 6 months and 3 years, but you're reaching out to the majority of the market that has no need for you. So even if they respond and take a meeting, the sales cycle is almost always going to be longer. So you've got to prepare yourself for that. You might think, well, who the hell ever wants to do outbound? But here's the key. When you start to do this, how do we stand out in this noisy market with AI? All of these platforms have made it so easy for us to do what I call scaled and veiled, right? You can send 500 emails and you can make it look personalized. I have $1 for every email that I get that says, Sam, I see that you are the founder at SamSales. Wow, great research, riveting. And then they're like, I see that you also went to FSU. Go Knowles. Want to buy my stuff? Absolutely not. What about it, right? Scale and veiled all day long. And it used to be cool. It used to be cool. You'd be like, wow, they see where I went to school. And now you're like, I'm on to you. We're on to you a long time ago. But so for us, we think about kick all that to the curb, right? If you want to think about how to connect with a buyer, all you have to do is one, do your homework. Do what we call show me, you know me. And just do a little research on their profile. What can you find? Where do they go to school? Where have they worked before? Do you have friends in common? Have they lived places you wanted to go? What's in their about section? What podcasts are they on? What's on their company site? What's in their press release? What's in their 10K if you're selling to a publicly traded company? On and on. I hear all the time, I'm willing to do the research, but I can't find anything in my buyers. And I say, bullshit. Am I allowed to curse? Bullshit. I did it twice. My only time. Because it's all there. At the very worst, it's on their website. You can find information, their goals, their priorities, their principles about how you connect to that. You just have to do the work. The key when you do this is number one, you need to have a compelling subject line. Nothing matters of what you write in your email if you don't get it open. You could literally write an email and offer people $1 million. If they're not opening the email, they're not going to open the email. Now, you could just say in the subject line, I'm going to give you $1 million if you open this. And they'll probably get some open. It's probably 100% open rate. But the subject line, think of the research that you've done. If you look at my profile, you might write something like Lausanne, which is a town in Switzerland, plus speeding tickets, plus your company name. I know Lausanne. I know a thing or two about speeding tickets. I don't know your company. But you've done your research, so I'm going to open up the email. The second thing, and I promise I'll stop talking in a second, is the content of the email. At SamSales, at our company, we have a line of business that teaches people how to write the content of this email so they can go and write it and succeed. Every single time we read the content that they are currently sending, it is the same thing. Without exception, it is the same thing. Hello, Hannah, this is what I do. Do you want to buy some of it? Your marketing and your value prop and what you do doesn't matter. It's the challenge you solve for the buyer. And if you say this is what we do, they're going to say, we already have that, delete. If you say, this is a challenge I suspect you have, despite having someone that does this, despite having CSMs that teach you this, despite this, here's how we can make a difference. Interested in learning more? That's it. It's one, starting that early, two, doing the work, and three, if everybody's listening to this and saying, that's really cute, how does it scale? It doesn't scale. What you have to do is instead of going to, let's say, the director that you might normally take a first meeting with, go to the VP, SVP, CRO, CTO, CIO, go up to the scary people, because I'll tell you what, they are the ones that are getting bombarded with scaled and veiled emails, and you're one that says something different, goes on speeding tickets plus whatever, is going to be the one that stands out, actually gets an open. And one more thing, and then I will stop talking. If they read your email, and even if they don't need you, half the time they're going to respond and say, great email, thanks for doing the work, what a refreshing change, we don't need you. And now the door is open to a conversation. You can push back, you can get over their objection, you can connect on LinkedIn, you can nurture them, you can say 90 days from now be a better time. You're just fighting for that response, and you've got to work for it.
That was amazing. You never stop talking. That was very helpful. I have a follow-up question. So I'm curious. So we talk a lot about messaging, which is obviously this key kind of part of outbound, is like what you say really does matter.
Yeah.
And one of the things that often founders in our portfolio and in our larger audience ask is if they should talk about being a startup founder and having a very early stage, being at the very early stage when reaching out to someone who is at an enterprise prospect. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on, because Because of course, some people are excited to give feedback to startups and be part of that building process. Others are, I don't have time for that, or I want to buy a product that is already ready to implement. So I'm curious what your thought is there.
I think it depends. I would probably err on the side of leaving it out because the fact that they are a startup founder probably isn't going to matter to the buyer. So it's less about us and it's more about what we can do to solve a challenge. Now, if us being a startup founder or us being a startup of some kind is an asset, right? So let's say those organizations, the DuPonts of the world, typically work with companies who are older, rigid, lots of red tape, less nimble. We might want to say one of the challenges I suspect you have is working with app developers that are really old school, whatever, huge, lots of red tape, et cetera. We don't have that. Being a startup, being an 8-person team, that means we can do this. We can rely on AI, machine learning, whatever, and we can design this in 6 days. Then, yes, it only matters if it matters to the buyer. That's what I would say. I would say the only reason I would say no on an enterprise level is exactly what you just said, Hannah. So if they, that enterprise buyer, sees startup, they're probably going to think the product is more than likely not developed enough or won't even get through procurement, security, all that stuff. I'm not even going to bother. This is going to sound mean. No one cares about you. We don't care about you and what you're bringing to the table and what you've done before, unless it's like really important to the product that you've developed. Just focus on the challenge and they'll vet you later. This is one important just piece I want to spin on this as well. When we get the initial conversation and we do that, what's supposed to be a discovery call, oftentimes instead we present slides, which is riveting for that buyer, or we do that discovery call and then we get on a demo and we present slides. And they all start with us, how we were founded, the dream we had in our parents' garage, our NASCAR slide of logos of who we've already acquired. No one cares. You don't have to establish that credibility. Nobody will buy you because you're credible, but you can't solve their challenge. They're going to buy you first because you can solve their challenge, and then they're going to verify your credibility. You've got to reverse it. Otherwise, you're going to put them to sleep and you're going to lose the deal.
Agree. You have a few minutes.
Yelling a lot today.
No, you have a few minutes to make an impression, right? And if you start about you, that's a great way to lose people.
What would you do on your first date? Would you be like, "Here are the other girls I dated"? And if that's what you're doing, you're dating like, call me. I will help you with sales aid. You're dating like.
That might be what's going wrong.
Look at all the benefit we're getting on this today.
I have maybe a little nuanced question for you. So let's say that you are a company that's selling to engineers, right, or engineering orgs, and we know that engineers are like notoriously even more fickle than most about answering email and dealing with salespeople. But you're this founder and you have a product that like will sell up to the engineering organization. Like, how would you advise that founder to navigate through those paths?
I think a few things. One, I would evaluate whether or not that really is your buyer persona. And I'll tell you why. We recorded our podcast today at SamSales, and we had the joy of hosting a woman by the name of Jess, who is a GM over an entire division at Amazon. She used to sell to engineers all the time and realized that her value proposition was basically trying to displace something for those engineers that they loved. And she was like, this is not our buyer persona. So she kept looking and looking and eventually went to the CFO and found that she could make measurable financial impact to what the CFO was writing off every year. So it's one thing I would tell you is make sure that the buyer persona that you have is the right one. If you're pitching to them and they're like, but I love my tools, and you're like, oh, but ours is better. Is there a different avenue that you can go in through? The other thing that I would say is engineers, along with most of us, myself excluded, of course, don't really like salespeople. And we don't like them because they come across in the traditional reputation that salespeople have. So I think, again, that show me you know me piece is different. It's what helps you stand out and say, I'm not a lovely salesperson. I'm different. I want to help you solve a challenge. I built this technology for a reason, right? But just go and do that homework first, because you'll stand out just by giving a darn. See, I'm not going to curse again. Just by giving a darn about the buyer, engineer or not. I think the other thing is, if you're selling into tech, right? Like tech buyers are inundated with these kinds of emails, but I think there's a whole world of buyers out there, from lawyers to accountants to engineers, all sorts of people that don't really get sold to that much. So your email with that homework in mind is going to stand out even more, because they're going to be like, this is new, instead of, again, same old crap that even if they don't get it that often.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Oh, so Sam, I think there's people that have different views on LinkedIn and its effectiveness. I find it to be extraordinarily effective at finding the right people and having a personalized touch. Like they can see my picture, they can see my background, and that tends to really help versus a cold email. But LinkedIn's changed over the years. You're an expert in it. What do you think founders should think about LinkedIn and how to use it?
I think LinkedIn, first of all, is like nerd prom. Like it's like all the uncool kids have gotten together. I love it for that. I also saw a great meme this week about when founder mode came out. What was it, last Sunday? I'm sure you guys were all a buzz about that. And somebody said, God, LinkedIn is just going to be a disaster this week with everybody talking about founder mode. I think I think the platform of LinkedIn is tremendously beneficial. I think about this, like I'll give you just a quick example from as one founder and a small company of 16 amazing women that are on my team. In the month of August, a quiet, sleepy month of August, right? My team posted a few posts themselves, and then I posted my regular shtick. But with us together, we got over 1.5 million impressions as a team. 1.5 million impressions that we didn't pay a dime for. 3 million in theory, little eyeballs looking at our content, right? That's wild. We didn't pay for it, right? And on top of that, it's not the people that we know that saw it. It's the people that we know that also then have networks of people that saw it. So I think about this for every single founder. Nobody knows you and nobody knows your company exists. Like, a lot of things I'm saying sound really rude, but you guys get it. Nobody knows you and nobody knows you exist. So how do we change that? How do you get your voice out, your value prop, your thought leadership out in a modern way? How do you market in a modern way? Think about all the things that are traditional, right? We put up a website, we have a newsletter, we do pay-per-click advertising, which is super cheap. We do things like that, right? To what effect? When we are trying to cast a net or cast a line and try to get people to come to our content, our webinar, our website, things like that, it's really hard. I think what we have to do instead is go where our buyers are, which is LinkedIn. People are there reading, even if they don't engage. And spoiler alert, most of your prospects and your inbound leads will never engage. You will find people that come to your website, fill out a form, say they heard you on LinkedIn, say they followed you on LinkedIn for a year, and you're like, who the hell are you? Happens to us every single day. They never engage because they don't want to be sold to. But think about it like this also. Let's say you're brand new as a company and there's a conference, LinkedIn, that you can go and show up at. Are you going to go to that conference and speak, post, and engage? Or are you going to put flyers up all over that content and say, come over here, come to our website. We're having a great time over here. You'd never do the latter. You would go where the action is. You would run around, you would network, you would stop by the booths, you'd go on stage and speak. That's the opportunity LinkedIn gives you, right? And your competition either is on LinkedIn and you have to catch up, or they're not, and they're not yet. And you have a competitive advantage. I will say also, one question I get back from a lot of founders is it poor form that I'm posting content, right? That I'm out there showing that I have time to do that. And I would say, is it poor form that you're prospecting? No, you're hustling, you're trying to build a company, you're doing the things that are important to get your name and your thought leadership out there. To me, there's no more important thing that you can do than market and figure out how to sell.
So how would you think about getting started then from a
Yeah, I was
concept
gonna
perspective?
say, where do I start?
Where do I start? I'm going to shamelessly plug our LinkedIn Influencer Playbook, which is on our website, samsalesconsulting.com. It is 45 pages that will either put you to sleep or delight you, but it is a cheat sheet of literally every single thing in my brain. How you get started, inspiration for content, monetizing the platform, growing your network, taking them off of LinkedIn onto your newsletter. Go get them, Tiger. But the things that I would do to get started are, one, get started in writing content. You have to make a commitment. This is your New Year's resolution, like your gym membership. But make sure that you post at least twice a week. And I'll talk about the content in a second. Twice a week. If you're only doing that, avoid Mondays. When you post on Monday, you and everybody else are like, today's the week and I'm going to start posting content. I'll post content. And then that means that there's heavier traffic and more competition to see your stuff. So avoid that day. Try a Tuesday or Wednesday, try a Thursday, and then do a Saturday or a Sunday. Saturday or Sundays, I would encourage you to do your posts that are a little bit more geared towards your senior leadership. So think about the buyers you might have, more narrower audiences. You're going to get less engagement and less impressions, but you're going to get them from the buyers you care about. Plus, executives, director plus levels tend to spend an average of 43 minutes every weekend on LinkedIn. They're there, they're reading. You just have to give them something to read. In terms of what content to write, so what I would tell you is one, especially as you get started, if you're in that camp where you're looking at your connections right now and you're like, I have 432, you have a very small audience at this point, which also means that because you have a small audience and you haven't posted content, no one trusts that what you write is going to be smart. So the first thing I would tell you is keep it short. Nobody needs to see my 5 tips to doing XYZ. Nobody cares about your 5 tips. Give me one, right? Super short, prove value, tangible, practical, actionable, right? Smart. When you write a post, finish writing it and then just say, so what? What did somebody learn? What can they do with this? What's actionable from this? That's the content that matters. Just like your podcast, people want to come and see that the time invested, 16 seconds of reading or 60 minutes of listening, is going to be worth their time. So capture short, tweet level kind of posts and then get longer from there. A couple of other things to just mention real fast. Make sure that you are systematically growing your audience. And this is mapped out in our playbook. But anybody who likes or comments on your post, that's a second or third degree connection. If they are anywhere in the realm of your buyer personas or your ICP, connect with them. Because if it is your direct buyer persona, guess who else they know? A whole mess of your other buyer personas. We want to take away that first degree, second degree of connection. We want to make them a first degree and tether ourselves tightly to them so they like and see our content more. The other thing is just 2 kind of quick algorithm rules that are really important. I find every founder makes mistakes with. No links in your post. So as you get started and you write something, you're like, I wrote this great blog piece, and you put a link in your post, it'll kill the post. LinkedIn does not want you to take their viewers away from the site. They count on 2 things, that people show up and that they spend a lot of time there. So when you post something and you're like, I'm going to take them to my website instead, LinkedIn says, that's cute. We're going to throttle your post so nobody sees it and they don't leave. And you're like,
Does that include the main post and the comments? Does it matter?
Just the main post. So then you can go to your comments, add your link in your comments, or you can add the link there. And then in an hour, you can do what we do. It has to be an hour later, which is go back, edit the post, drop your link in, and then call it a day.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise.
That's a LinkedIn hack right there.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the second thing, and this always catches people off guard, but when you go to reshare a post, at the bottom of your LinkedIn post, let's say your company post or somebody else, an employee of your company, there's repost, and there's 2 options, repost with your comments or just repost. When you just repost, you're basically just reposting the content of the original author. And if anybody likes or comments on that post, it goes to the original author. When you repost with your comments, you're effectively creating a new post. You're writing something about it. And then if somebody likes or comments on that post, the credit, so to speak, goes to you. Here's the kicker. Repost with comments gets almost no visibility because what you're basically doing is you're resharing content that already exists and you're like, this was great. Here are my thoughts on it. And LinkedIn, you should have just reposted and added comments because nobody really cares about your thoughts in a new post on this post. Why? Let's say I posted and then 78 of you guys went and reposted mine with your thoughts, which would just fill LinkedIn with SamSales, which sounds amazing to me, but not so exciting to LinkedIn. So what they want is net new original content. I say that because it is anti to what people would think. They would think reposting with comments would be good. And so they do it. And then they realize that it's a post killer. You'll see if you write a net new post versus share with comments, the engagement and the visibility will be miles apart.
I have 2 follow-up questions on LinkedIn etiquette. And I'm sorry if these are
Let's hear it.
in your e-learning offering, which everyone should go download. One is graphics. Yes, no, maybe. Is it valuable to design an image to go along with a post or have a video? If I've seen people post like a Loom video of them talking about that which they've written about, things like that. That's question 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then question 2, you alluded to it, but brand posting versus human individual posting. We at Unusual, we often have a preference that the individual humans post and then the brand does the repost because we've seen the LinkedIn algorithm favor our content better when we do that. But I'm curious if we're not getting that quite right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So on the graphics part, graphics are always great. Anything that theoretically stops the scroll, if you will. So it makes the person pause. One of the things that's really instrumental in getting further visibility in your post is how long someone stays on it. I want to dive into a little something there. when you write your post, there's something 2, 3, or 5 lines, depending on how you're accessing the post. You get to see that, and then you see something that says .see more. If you can get people to click on that and then stop on your post will fly. So your hook of your post, your title, your headline effectively is really important. Graphics are the same way because people stop on it. What I would tell you is if you're going to put time into graphics, actually put time into something different, which is a carousel. So you've probably seen that where it's like a PDF of 6 or 7 images that are loaded, right? Like here's my 5 tips to whatever, and make the first one visible, because then people will click through that and they're spending time, like seconds and seconds on your post, which is really valuable. So invest the time there. On company versus human, sorry, Hannah, can you repeat the question? Is it we're spending time creating content for the company page, but should we not be?
That, yes, but also we've made the decision at Unusual to mostly spend time on individual posting and then have our company page repost that which our individual employees have posted, which has worked for us, but I'm curious if that's a fluke.
Totally fine. We, again, at SamSales, we have a line of business that basically writes and manages the profiles of executives all over the place. So celebrities, Series A founders, and Fortune 500 execs alike. One of the questions that we get when we do that and we write all their content is, can you also manage our company page? And we always say, don't pay us to do that. It's not worth it. Says every founder, don't give us money, but don't give us money to do that. I think your company page reposting individual content is totally fine. Even if it just gets a few hundred extra eyeballs on it, that's awesome. Content from your company page will never do anywhere as well as content from individuals. So if you're going to prioritize something, it's not even prioritize something. It's spend the time and make sure that you're doing things from your C-suite or from your SVP titles. The human voice of sharing that content is what's going to matter. People don't care about the company page post because it's self-promotional. It's all about the company. Plus, why would they engage with it? Why would they comment, right? Because who's going to comment back? The marketing coordinator behind the scenes? Who knows? But they really want to engage with the human. So make sure it's the human at your company that's writing content on their profile page. Missy, just one more thing there. The other just beautiful part is a C-suite and SVPs alike, you get more reach just because of who you are. People will engage with you because they want to be seen by the executive leaders, by founders, by people who are hiring, who are going to grow, who are going to spend money. So you don't even have to write something that exciting to get some engagement half the time, right? And that's also why you'll see some executive leaders post some really terrible content that gets a lot of engagement. And you're like, really?
So Sam, sounds like that is part of your recommendation, because one of my next questions was who in an organization should be posting, like in thinking about like the content strategy. Traditionally, it's been your marketer that's delegated a lot of the content, but it sounds like what you're recommending is for the founders and the key executives to make sure they're sharing thought leadership and things that they're learning about the market out there.
Yeah, and 70% of it should be things that you were teaching the market. So it's not about your webinars, your speaking engagements, conferences you're sponsoring. It's not that. It's sharing thought leadership. So if you look today, the post that I have is a video all about our Show Me You Know Me methodology that we talked about earlier. Subject line, so it works, how to do it, etc. Now you see that like I'm not selling anything, I'm not pitching our services, I'm not telling you to hire us for training. I'm teaching you something which makes the person say, who is this person? Right? And hopefully look at our post, look at what we do, and then say, oh, she's credible there. And then hopefully, and then I keep posting that same stuff, or I keep posting about LinkedIn, et cetera. And at some point, somebody's going to say, I think this is what she must do for a living. What is SamSales? Right? Let's hope. And then they come and then they inbound. The great part about LinkedIn is that you get to educate your market until they convert, until they're ready to buy, and then they inbound to you. You can still do that outbound, and you should be doing that outbound on top of this. But by building a voice here, you're creating a flywheel of engagement of an audience, growing that systematically, and getting people to believe in what you say so that when they say, hey, I think we need to buy this, they already have kind of a relationship with you, right? People get on calls and they're like, I feel like I already know you. And I'm like, I don't know you, but I'm very excited to be here. So I think it's that, like, critical to get those voices out and make sure people know who you are and you're not just a faceless brand.
Okay, Sam, tactical question. So some founders are going to want to automate everything, right? So they can get back to building. What do you think about schedulers for posts? Does that work? Does that not? How does that affect things?
Schedulers through LinkedIn are fine, which means go to your post. There's a little clock on the LinkedIn page. You can schedule that post, no issue there. And then they're actually just releasing some of it. I was have it in beta, but ability to edit scheduled posts as well. Which thank God, why wasn't this already here? Scheduling through anything else for LinkedIn specifically is completely not worth your money. So very dirty little secret of all these platforms. Like I won't name them in case some of them eventually want to be our clients, but if you can auto share, schedule it all, and then it auto plugs into LinkedIn, it'll kill your post. I don't know about this for Instagram, for Facebook, for X, for any of that, so don't listen to me there. But for LinkedIn specifically, again, going back to what I said earlier, LinkedIn cares about two things: how often you come to the platform and how long your dwell time is. When you use an auto scheduler platform that works with an API, you're saying, hey, those two things you want from me, I'm not going to give you. Even if you post and immediately come in 2 minutes later to engage, LinkedIn doesn't know that, right? So all they know is you're using the API, you're trying to spam, you're trying to automate, and they're like, no thanks. So again, 10%, 12% of the visibility you would get if you just went in and posted. I will also say, depending on the size of your organization, this is why our line of business exists for writing and handling all the administrative backend for executives. For a lot of executives, this just isn't worth your time, right? It's not worth your time to dream up the post, to comment, to add, to manage your DMs and your connection requests and all of that. Outsource that to somebody else. Like probably one of the most obvious lessons I can impart in any founder: figure out quickly the things you do that do not require your brain and your talent, and pay to solve those problems so that you can focus on the strategic things. Now, I will say for me, I probably spend 4 or 5 hours on LinkedIn a day. First thing I wake up, last thing before I go to bed, posts all day long, engagement. It's worth it for me, right? Because it's our primary source of inbound. And I want to continue to challenge people when they're posting things like that. But for others, usually not so much.
Awesome. You mentioned a few other platforms. Are you seeing success anywhere else in terms of reaching your ICP and getting leads?
I would only say diversify your audience if they're there. So a lot of people feel like they do need to be on TikTok, on X, on Facebook. And I'm like, is your audience there? That's the first thing you have to think about. For us, we're B2B. That's all we really focus on. Consumers as well for our playbooks and subscriptions. But other than that, it really doesn't make sense for us to be anywhere else. We try to think about advertising on X, and that was, for anyone from X listening, that was quite a lesson in what not to do in sales. Really fantastic. But we thought about that, and we built on TikTok. We still have people who find us through TikTok, but I don't know that I can keep producing content on TikTok and maintain my dignity. So
Definitely a different vibe than LinkedIn over there.
Yeah.
Definitely
But
different.
go where your audience is. It might be across a few different platforms, but I would say try, before you spread yourself too thin, focus on one where you know your buyers are, build a muscle and a cadence there, and then say, okay, now where? Like with your products, instead of inventing 3 different products, build your core competency, get that really right, and then grow.
Yeah. I think we might switch gears a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Away from LinkedIn specifically. Just want to be respectful of your time, but get to a couple other topics. So I'm curious about your thoughts on, it's related to what Doug was asking about around automation for posting on LinkedIn. So I'm curious, there's so many new AI tools and technologies and things out there for folks to use to augment their go-to-market motion. I'm curious what you're excited about in the AI sales tooling space and what you're a little bit less excited about. Where are you feeling a little more concerned?
I will say this maybe is an overarching theme. What our buyers love, and I say this with deep sarcasm, is to be tricked. And I find that a lot of AI, that's what it advertises. It advertises the ability to trick your buyers into your effort, into your knowledge, into your research, into a lot of different things. And to me, call me old-fashioned, but like transparency, integrity, honesty still counts. And think about a lot of the automation that I see. Like there's the SDR, the AI SDR. You can just fire your entire 500-person global SDR team and just AI the bazoozle out of it. And so what do you get? That's an official word. What do you get? You get people who send emails, right? And it's, again, scaled and veiled to the thing that I said before. It looks like it was made for me. We'll get emails that say, Sam, I'm so intrigued by SamSales. And I'm like, that's amazing. What intrigues you? No response, shocking, because it's a bot or a person that just use that. But I think from that perspective, right, use AI. I think the people that will succeed are people who are using AI to scale their competency, to scale their education about a space, about a buyer. They're taking their content, their podcast, they're throwing in ChatGPT and then saying, tell me 5 high-level things that this executive would care about based on their content. Use it to speed up your education, right? That's where I think AI is going to be really fantastic. I will say, like, for all the excitement that there is around AI, I think the frustration continues to grow with how it's used, again, to do mass outreach that is tactless. So I think the more you use that, the more your buyers are going to get turned off, the less your results are going to be. And it's going to be even harder, which frankly makes Show Me You Know Me even more successful because, again, you're just trying. But that's it for me. I think there's so many great things to be had from it. You just have to use it in the right way.
Sam, automating your research, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great automating. Augmenting is the word you use, helping speed up getting competent to reach out to somebody with something they care about. I couldn't agree more. Anything else, like anything else you're either using or you're seeing out there you feel could be worthwhile to invest in or test
Yeah.
and that you're scared of?
Fair scared up. I'll shamelessly plug. I think one, Apollo, we're partners to Apollo, just in full transparency there. But I think they've really done a phenomenal job with their platform. We use it both on the marketing side and the sales side. And I think just their data accuracy, all the tools and everything they're investing in, I think they're one of the few companies that's really trying to figure out how to help sellers do it right instead of, again, focus on that trickery. I'm also excited to see LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is the company I work for LinkedIn and for LinkedIn Sales Navigator specifically before starting SamSales, but they're really starting to come into their own with AI and things that really are useful to sellers. So again, scaling that intelligence, who knows who, things that it could do before, but I think leveraging that intelligence a bit more straightforwardly, if that's a word. Pumped to see that. And then I think also just everybody is in this kind of arms race again to scale that AI for Show Me You Know Me. Again, if I had $1 for every company, we know how to scale Show Me You Know Me with AI. Do you want to see it? And we're like, no, we'd be on a beach somewhere by now. But excited to see just how this is going to develop and excited to see who also is the first to market to say, here are the 100 hacks of what AI can do for you. Because I feel like you need a degree and like we're all figuring out like all the cool things that a Gemini or a ChatGPT can do for us.
Going back to what we talked about earlier in the call, what soliciting feedback and founders really trying to understand like what the pains are and be solution oriented versus the pushy sales. One thing I think founders sometimes have a hard time with is when they're on a call and they're thinking about everything that's going on that call and maybe what they're going to present, they might miss a few things. And so tools that help recap the conversation they had and bring out pain points that were mentioned and product feed that were mentioned can be quite useful. Or recapping that their baby's actually ugly and they can hear it again, right? So I'm curious, do you use those yourself? Or are you recommending those sort of techniques?
We do. We're not a partnership deal yet with Fathom, but I'll plug Fathom. If you guys don't know the tool, it's really fantastic. Have you guys used it before as a call?
I have. Yeah.
I think we have.
Yeah, I don't know if that's competing with anything that you guys support. So sorry if it is. But yeah, we've been really impressed with the tool, the technology, and just the reports it spits out afterwards. Is like, it feels like you had a human taking notes on the call, maybe better than a human. So things like that have been really helpful to us.
Yeah. I would love to hear just one final topic that I'm curious about, that if we just have a couple more minutes. I'm curious, as you think about, so as Doug mentioned at the top of the call, we encourage folks to lean into founder-led sales for whatever period of time makes sense for their product and as they move in their funding rounds. And I'm curious, when they do feel ready to hire a sales leader or bring in, maybe they're first bringing in like an SDR and then they get to a sales leader at some point, whatever. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on who to hire first is one question. And then what do you look for in a really strong early sales team?
I think one mistake I think a lot of founders make is they get excited about hiring really sexy titles. And so they'll fill out their C-suite board, basically. They'll hire their SVP of sales. It makes them seem more important when they have that. And I would say for most, it's probably a mistake depending on where they are. I think this is an answer that really needs to be custom curated for the organization, but a couple of things to just consider. At what stage are you in your sales process? And you might be at the very early stages where you say, I just can't do this. It's not my style. I'm not disciplined enough. I don't know how to have the right conversations. I can admit that this is not my core competency. if that's it, right, this is an opportunity for you to think of how do you find a co-founder that can help you sell? How do you find the capital to bring somebody on? How do you make it interesting enough, right, financially for somebody to come and do that? If you're like, I'm great at this, but I only have so much time and I can't do the prospecting, I can't do the cold outreach anymore, then just ask yourself, if I had 5, 6 more meetings every single week, which is a long shot, by the way, but if I had that, could I still take those? Could I take them? Could I close them? Could I run those cycles? If so, then I'm going to hire a BDR. You need to keep in mind, whoever you hire, maybe it's an AE, that person's still probably going to need management, KPIs, direction, etc. So if you're not prepared for that, consider that. The path that we took at SamSales is a little bit different. So what I basically took is I had somebody on my team who had sales experience prior, but wasn't interested in being a salesperson again. And I said, why don't you just shotgun all my calls? I'm going to do my tap dancing and all my magic, and then whatever the hell that is. And then at the end of the call, you handle all the administration, proposals, follow up, nurture, all of that. We'll meet on a pipeline call for an hour. I'll tell you everything to do every single week, and then you go do it. You're responsible for the chasing. I'm responsible for the magic, so to speak. But I think there's a few different directions you can take. Just don't make the mistake of hiring. If you really need somebody to still do that grind, go get meetings, and you can still take them, a VP of sales is not the route to go because you're going to be paying $150,000 for a BDR. If you are ready for a founder, I'm going to quickly plug Amy Volas and give her a shout, particularly your early stage. She knows her stuff and can help you recruit.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sam. This has been amazing. I know I speak for both of us when we say thank you for your time. We so appreciate it. Is there anything you want to plug for yourself? Where can people find you? Where do you want them to come read your content?
Say hello in LinkedIn. Come to samsalesconsulting.com. We have a newsletter that comes out every Friday. It's pretty funny. It has tangible, actual, practical stuff. Our webinars are free. Our women's leadership group is free. The only thing that's not is our resources, but give them a shot. You'll be our first refund if you ask for one, but we're always game for feedback. And otherwise, come and hang out with us. We put on a lot of good stuff.
Amazing.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, this has been great.